Picture this. It's 1987. Mike Tyson is at the absolute peak of his power, the most feared man on the planet, heavyweight champion who's demolished every opponent in his path. But at a star-studded charity event in Los Angeles, Iron Mike is about to learn that the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous. Chuck Norris sits across the room, humble, soft-spoken, wearing a simple black suit. To most people, he's just that guy from action movies. But Mike sees an easy target, a Hollywood pretender who needs to be reminded of what real power looks like. What happens next will shatter everything you think you know about strength and the deadly mistake of judging a book by its cover. Because sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the loudest one, it's the one you never see coming. The Beverly Hills Hotel ballroom buzzed with Hollywood royalty and sports legends. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over the annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala. Mike Tyson commanded attention from the moment he walked in. At 21, he was the undisputed heavyweight champion, moving through the crowd like a shark through shallow water. His massive frame barely contained by his tuxedo, neck thick as a tree trunk, hands that had ended careers with single punches. When Mike entered a room, conversation stopped. He just destroyed Trevor Berbick, James Smith, Pinklin Thomas. The world was calling him unstoppable, invincible, and Mike was starting to believe his own press. Meanwhile, Chuck Norris sat quietly at a corner table, talking with a pediatric surgeon about the hospital's new wing. At 47, Chuck had lived multiple lifetimes: six-time world karate champion, military veteran, successful actor. But you'd never know it watching him. He listened more than he spoke. When kids approached for autographs, he knelt to their level, giving them his full attention. Chuck Norris had nothing to prove to anyone. That should have been Mike's first clue. The trouble started when Mike's entourage made their rounds. Don King worked the room like a carnival barker, his electric hair catching every light. Mike's eyes kept drifting to Chuck's table. Something about the older man's calm demeanor irritated him. In Mike's world, respect was taken, not earned through quiet dignity. "Who's the old guy in the corner?" Mike asked Don King, his distinctive lisp making threats sound more menacing. "That's Chuck Norris, action star. Does those karate movies?" Mike scoffed. "Karate? That dancing around stuff? That ain't fighting. That's just kicking air for cameras." Here was a man who'd built a career pretending to be tough, while Mike had spent his life proving it in the most brutal arena on earth. The resentment simmered, a familiar feeling that preceded his most explosive moments. "I should go introduce myself," Mike said, cracking knuckles like gunshots. His trainer grabbed his arm gently. "Mike, this is a charity event." But Mike was already walking, his frame cutting through the crowd like a battleship. Conversations withered as people sensed the shift in atmosphere. Chuck looked up as the shadow fell across his table. Mike Tyson stood there, 5 feet 10 inches of concentrated violence, dark eyes boring into Chuck with predatory intensity. "Chuck Norris, right?" Mike's voice carried across the suddenly quiet ballroom. "I'm Mike Tyson." Chuck rose gracefully, extending his hand with genuine warmth. "Of course, Mike. Congratulations on your success. You're an incredible athlete." The handshake lasted too long. Mike's grip tightened. A test. Chuck's expression never changed, but his posture shifted slightly, feet positioning differently. "I hear you're supposed to be some kind of fighter," Mike continued, voice getting louder. "All that kicking and spinning stuff. Must be nice having stunt doubles do the real work." Chuck's smile remained steady. "I've been fortunate to have a good career in entertainment." "Entertainment," Mike repeated with contempt. "Just entertainment. Not real fighting. Not like what I do." Other guests backed away, sensing the electricity. Chuck remained calm, hands relaxed. "You know what you are, Chuck." Mike's voice rose, pre-fight rage surfacing. "You're just a kicker. Just some Hollywood kicker who pretends to be tough for cameras." The insult hung in the air. Chuck's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only sign Mike's words found their mark. "I think there's a misunderstanding, Mike. We're here for the children." "Don't change the subject," Mike snarled, stepping closer. "I'm talking about what happens when Hollywood meets reality." As Mike loomed over him, Chuck's mind flashed back 30 years. He was 17 again, getting beaten by neighborhood bullies in Oklahoma. The same rage, helplessness, feeling cornered by someone who mistook cruelty for strength. That terrified teenager had driven him to martial arts. Not for fame or recognition, but for discipline to control anger, wisdom to use power responsibly. Chuck had learned not just how to fight, but when not to fight. Mike kept talking, voice rising. Come on, old man. Show me what you got. Show everyone what happens when real fighting meets fake karate. Chuck looked around. Children from the hospital were watching, faces confused and frightened by adult anger erupting in what should be a safe space. That's when something shifted behind Chuck's calm exterior. Mike, Chuck said quietly, his voice carrying weight that made the boxer pause. I'm going to ask you one more time to step back. Something different in Chuck's tone now. Not anger, not fear, but absolute certainty. Mike laughed harshly. Or what, old man? You're going to kick me? I'm going to stop you. What happened next took 3 seconds, but would be whispered about for decades. Mike Tyson threw a punch that had ended careers, a right cross delivered with all the fury that made him a legend. Chucknorris moved like water. The punch missed by inches as Chuck flowed sideways with fluid movements. Before Mike could recover, Chuck's hand, almost gentle, touched the boxer's wrist and guided the massive arm into empty air. Mike stumbled forward, carried by his own momentum. He tried to turn, reset, bring his legendary power to bear. Chuck's foot swept Mike's legs with surgical precision. The heavyweight champion crashed to the marble floor with an echo through the silent ballroom. Mike tried to get up, confusion and rage warring in his eyes. Chuck placed one firm hand on his shoulder, not striking, not hurting, just holding him in place with minimal effort. Stay down, Mike, Chuck said softly. Please don't make me hurt you. For the first time in his adult life, Mike Tyson found himself looking up at an opponent who'd put him down without throwing a punch, without showing anger, without losing control. Chuck extended his hand to help Mike up. For a moment, it looked like the boxer might explode into familiar rage, but something in Chuck's eyes, not triumph, just genuine concern, stopped him. Mike took the offered hand, uninjured but profoundly shaken. The man who'd built his identity around being the most dangerous person in any room had been neutralized by someone who looked like a suburban dad. Are you hurt? Chuck asked quietly. Mike shook his head, unable to find words. The rage competed with confusion. This wasn't how these things were supposed to go. Chuck straightened Mike's bow tie with the care he might show a child. Good. That's all that matters. How? Mike finally whispered. Chuck smiled that same gentle smile. 30 years of learning when not to fight, Mike. Tonight wasn't about who's stronger. It was about protecting these kids from seeing something they shouldn't see. Mike looked around and saw what Chuck had seen. Children watching, learning, forming their understanding of what strength meant. I'm sorry, Mike said, words foreign but necessary. Chuck nodded. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do next. The charity event continued, but everything had changed. Mike spent the rest of the evening at Chuck's table, listening to the pediatric surgeon, signing autographs with uncharacteristic gentleness. Chuck never mentioned what happened. He didn't gloat or seek recognition. To him, it was just Tuesday night, a problem solved with minimum necessary force. In years that followed, Mike would battle legal troubles, personal demons, the long journey toward redemption. But he'd sometimes think about that night, about the man who taught him that real strength isn't about proving you're the toughest person in the room. Real strength is protecting those who can't protect themselves. It's knowing when to fight and when to walk away. It's understanding that the most dangerous weapon isn't your fists, it's your character. Chuck understood something Mike was just learning. The person with the most power isn't necessarily making the most noise. Sometimes it's the one sitting quietly in the corner, watching, waiting, ready to act only when action serves something greater than ego. Because the strongest people aren't the ones who prove their strength to everyone, they're the ones who never have to prove it at all.